Just a quick show of hands, how many horticulturalists are in the room? Excellent. Tree crops, fruits, nuts? Excellent. So I can pretty much make up most of this as we go. Okay, so just make sure we get through this. Yep. Okay, so yes, my name is Matthew Fealy. I am a 2017 Nuffield Scholar. I am the manager of our family-owned business, Blue Sky Produce, in Far North Queensland. We have locations in both Mareeba and Fealy, and approximately 200 acres under tree with 4 varieties of avocado, 3 varieties of mango and Tahitian limes. Not coming from a horticultural background and entering farming probably from a non-traditional pathway, I questioned everything. I had no preconceived ideas of how it was done. So I asked people who did do it very, very well how they do it and what our challenges are. And after our first season, it became pretty apparent what our top 3 challenges really were. It is the quality, the supply and the cost of labour. A lot of people just concentrate on the cost, but I'll talk a bit more about supply of that labour shortly. We operate in a supply and demand market. It is the single greatest determining factor of our income. Oversupply and undersupply we have very little control over with seasonal fruits, and they are, as I said, the main determining factor of our income. And obviously in a lot of fruit or tree crop horticultural businesses, most of the produce is hand harvested, which is not only slow and costly, but it does result in up to 30% crop losses through poor handling. Just on the labour supply, just keep this in mind, I guess, throughout the whole presentation. In 2015, 12th of May, then Treasurer Joe Hockey announces the infamous backpacker tax. We have an over-reliance on our working holiday visa workforce, and it dried up virtually overnight. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So with those challenges, naturally I turned to Dr. Google to find solutions. I found fantastic videos, YouTube, of autonomous tractors, robotic harvesters, all these promises of what was going to be delivered. And then I looked at the date the video was uploaded. Some of them were over a decade old. I looked at news articles and all these wonderful technological solutions to all of my problems, but I looked out my window and there was none of them on my farm. I looked over the neighbour's fence, there was none of them on his farm. I talked to everybody I could in the industry and they were a pipe dream. So I guess that was the impetus for me to apply for a Nuffield Scholarship. I thought it was probably a Nuffield journey that would give me the most grounded, yet high-level penetrating experience I could possibly ask for to head around the world and ask some pretty important questions. I decided to focus on 3 main areas. As you can see there, the automation of repetitive tasks, the use of machine vision to help with our crop forecasting, and the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal, mechanised harvesting. So throughout my scholarship, I travelled to about 14 countries. In my personal travel, I particularly came across many solutions and answers to my questions in the USA, Israel, Germany and the Netherlands. I embarked on a journey to interview farmers, ag tech investors, entrepreneurs, insurance executives, anybody that I could see that would be involved in the development of, or the adoption of, or the facilitation of this sort of technology. What I found was there is some technology available today that can make some immediate gains on my farm and I believe any tree crop farm. There is some tech that's coming in the future, the very near future, that is going to have some pretty disruptive gains to our businesses. But there is some changes that we're going to have to make on farm and in our industry investment systems and even perhaps in our political systems. So I thought I'd show you visually some of the things I saw. This is the Caesar, developed in Germany, a place called Dresden by a man called Hannes Heinemann. Here's, sorry about the shakiness there. He developed this specifically for spraying We all know, any of the tree crop horticulturists in the room, spraying is a very time-consuming task. It requires a semi-skilled worker. Then over to the Netherlands, I visited Precision Makers. So they were the developers of the Greenbot. I love this one, 100 horsepower, PTO, 3-point linkage both ends. This one has a lot going for it. But here is also something from Precision Makers. It's just a regular tractor where they've taken all the smarts out of the Greenbot and put it just into a regular tractor and given it an on and off button. The reason why nobody has ever sold one of these autonomous vehicles like the Caesar or the Greenbot is because it costs as much as a tractor and only does one job. They cannot compete with the ubiquity of the tractor platform. So Precision Makers decided to take all the smarts, put it in a regular tractor and give it an on-off button so that you can use it autonomously when needed, but use it manually for any other job you needed with a man inside. Now here's me driving it. I have to admit it was quite unnerving to press a button, take my hands off the wheel and watch it go down this very, very narrow apple orchard. Now, I actually had the opportunity to speak to the owner of this farm, Mr. John Verkuigens from the Netherlands. He's been operating this system for 3 years in that tractor. It now averages 3 hours a day autonomously, so about 1,000 hours a year. He believes the return on investment on this was less than 2 years. This is now completing his entire spray program, his slashing program, and it's now also doing a lot of his boom spraying. So as far as the autonomous application of repetitive tasks, I believe this can be a game changer. To give you an idea to go home and think about in your businesses, 75,000 Australian dollars. In my business, my figures, conservatively, I believe I'll get a 3-year return on investment as well. Moving on to machine vision to help us with our ability to accurately forecast our crops, to hopefully alleviate our supply and demand troubles. Here's a great video from the Australian Centre of Field Robotics. Now this is just one video, but every country I went to, everybody is working on this. Why? Because we are in a supply and demand market. Again, it is the single greatest determining factor of our income. So here they're using machine vision to look at the trees, algorithms, some great smarts behind the scenes to separate out the apples, separate out the fruit and count the fruit. The Australian Centre of Field Robotics has famously promoted the shrimp robot here. I don't really want to tell you how much it's cost them, but it's not going to be adopted on any farm in Australia or the world, really. It's very impressive, and they are getting a long way ahead. They're getting some great gains in their back-end processing of this imagery, but there's no real need for this small, very, very, very expensive autonomous robot. Sure, it satisfies our inner George Jetson, but there is no need. Here's a unit from the Central Queensland University. It's a couple of light bars off eBay that you'd put on the front of your four-wheel drive or your Gator on a Shep pellet whacked on the back of a farm ute. That's what they're using to collect the same data. These guys know that the ultimate goal here is not another machine, another robot, another expense to go sending down the orchard to get this data. They're going to stick this to the side of your tractor that's already going down the row and already doing a pass, getting multiple outputs from that single pass. Now let's put this on that autonomous tractor that we saw earlier, and we're really starting to get some return on investment. Just so you can see here, this is the way the smarts separate out the mangoes on the trees here, if that's not clear for some of the non-horticulturalists in the room. Now virtually everywhere in the world I went, I saw this machine vision application, and they were achieving accuracies of approximately 60%. That doesn't sound very accurate, but it is a lot more accurate than the current method of just walking out into the orchard, counting a few trees and averaging it across your orchard. CQU have now used deep learning algorithms just in this last season to achieve a result with an accuracy of less than 5%, an error of less than 5%. So their machine said that there would be 38,000 pieces of fruit in that pick. There was 36,000. This is a game changer. What I really like about Central Queensland University's approach is they're not just using it to count the fruit, they're incorporating this data into a platform for farmers to make real decisions. What they're using is small microclimate sensors strategically placed throughout the orchard to then calculate heat and cold units to determine flower emergence and maturity, piping that in together with the machine vision data for every pass that they're doing, and utilising the new Fealy instruments near infrared field maturity gun, dry matter testing gun, to create these heat maps for farmers to be able to look and say, that's where my most mature fruit is. Now imagine we pipe this into a robotic autonomous harvester, and my suppliers, my Woolworths calls me and says, I want 10 pallets of size 23 avocados, and they've got to be this maturity. I can pipe this data directly into a machine that can go out there and pick that fruit off that tree. The technology's there. This works. Excited? Yeah? This is where we have to start doing something. This is where the hard work comes in. Guys, the technology's there, it's capable, it's working, but we are not ready for it. We have to change how we farm to facilitate the adoption of this technology. We have to do away with our conventional low-density planting, large three-dimensional trees. Now, the apple and pear industry, the cherries, the apricots, the stones, these guys are leading the way, and they're blazing the path for us tropical fruit orchardists. But no longer can we have conventional plantings. I'll just skip along. So you can see here, that's the two-dimensional planting. This is a great trial in Far North Queensland, Mareeba, Walkerman, up in my area. You can see how easy it is to see that fruit there, and if it's easy to see, for you, it's easy to see. For the machine, it's easy to pick. Here's some results from that trial. In a conventional low-density planting system, you're looking at 3 tonne to the hectare. In the high-density planting, you're looking at almost 14. If that's not a good enough reason to make this change, even just for your own productivity benefits, let alone future-proofing your orchard, I don't know what is. I know it is hard to change old orchards, but you must think about this for any new plantings. Okay, if anyone was looking for the big Steve Jobs reveal of the latest, greatest avocado robotic harvester, you're going to be a little bit disappointed, but that's because, again, we haven't quite caught up with the technology. But here's some examples. So Dan Steer of Abundant Robotics here in Washington State in the United States, this machine's been doing the rounds for a while. I'm sure you've probably actually all seen it. But this is for sale in the United States this season. A lot of people pick on how slow it is, but the point being is this is a test unit. He's planning on having 6 of these arms on each side of the machine to meet the same speed of a harvesting team. So again, this technology is there, but we need to make a couple of changes. So then in Israel, I met with Gad Kober of FF Robotics. He's taken a slightly different approach, the single actuated arm approach. As you can see, it's very effective. It can reach into the tree, it can move up and down, left and right on 3 different axes and into the tree and pick this fruit. Central Queensland University are actually working on one of these as well, on a traditional mango harvester, putting approximately 10 of these arms either side, that's 20 arms, to reach the same kind of picking speeds as a regular team. Now, if you need any validity of what hand harvesting versus mechanised harvesting is, this is celery harvesting in California, in Salinas Valley. I was very fortunate to get a couple of minutes, well, about half, actually it turned into about an hour, with Bruce Taylor of Taylor Farms, the largest salad producer on the planet. He produces 2/3 of salad consumed in the United States. So he's fairly big. This is how celery was harvested. I saw hundreds of paddocks in Salinas with Mexicans bent over at 90 degrees cutting it like that. He developed this machine, and you know why? It wasn't even to reduce cost. He told me this story of the balance of power changing. He tells me he came into work one day and nobody was there. What's happening at the moment, for the first time in history, there are more Mexicans leaving California than arriving. Protectionism politics is getting more and more popular. Migration workforces are becoming very out of vogue. Even here in Australia, the tragedy with Mia Alifi Chung, Her mother's on the news every couple of weeks blaming the Australian Working Holiday Visa Program for the murder of her daughter. If we don't know that story, look it up. It wasn't the Working Holiday Visa, it was a Frenchman on drugs. But they are out of vogue, and they're out of vogue all around the world. So if we don't have the Working Holiday Visa Program, who is going to pick your fruit? So recommendations. The greatest examples of technology adoption on farm that I saw was through very close farmer collaboration. It was not a research institution pushing it downstream, it was led by farmers. Now again, I may not make many friends saying these things, but we are as responsible for that as anybody else. We have to put our hand up, we have to get involved with the research institutions and say, come and test things on my farm. I found most researchers were looking for farmers as much as farmers were looking for the technology. There is a little thing called tech literacy that is a bit of a problem. I won't talk about it much today. I'll talk about it in my report a little bit more. But there is a big jump in the tech literacy required to adopt this technology to what most farmers have today. And I believe the greatest kickstart to that tech literacy would be some incentive, something like 150% tax incentive for the adoption of robust, mature technologies like fully autonomous watering systems, fertigation systems, farm management platforms. If we can, it's like a gateway drug. If we go into those systems, we can get our tech literacy up quite rapidly so that we can be ready for the future. Now imagine your grandma. Is she doing real well on the iPad at the moment? Maybe not, because she hasn't stayed up with it. If we don't stay up with the stuff that we can now, we're not going to be ready for this. Some couple of take-home questions. Are you adopting the most robust, mature technologies today to stay up to date with your tech literacy, or are you being left behind? What would your business look like tomorrow if the Working Holiday Visa Program was scrapped? And what would your bottom line look like if the one thing we can guarantee is that our inputs will go up and the margins will shrink? And what are you doing about increasing your productivity? Finally, I'd like to thank Nuffield. This opportunity wouldn't happen without an amazing organisation like this. My sponsor, Woolworths, my friends and family back home, my farmhand who had to manage the farm without me and my family in the business, and my amazing wife, Jess, who no doubt has regretted putting that Nuffield brochure under my nose many years ago, many, many times, but I could not have done it without you, Jess. Thank you very much.